21 countries, one currency, no exit door. Launched in 1999, a bold leap into a shared future, an economic superpower to rival America. Prosperity without borders. What they didn't tell you is that the men who designed it understood, even before the ink was dry on the Maastricht Treaty, that this project carried a structural contradiction capable of tearing Europe apart, no bi-accidentamatic. This isn't hindsight. The warnings were clear and public. Robert Mundell's theory of optimal currency areas in 1961. Milton Friedman's 1997 critique in the Wall Street Journal, Martin Feldstein's stark essay in Foreign Affairs the same year, and classified memos circulating in European capitals before the treaty was signed. The euro was never a flawed experiment. It was a structurally guaranteed crisis with a slow-burning fuse. To see why the euro was always destined to crack, you need to understand a concept rarely discussed outside graduate seminars. Optimal currency areas, introduced by Canadian economist Robert Mundell in 1961, the paper that later helped earn him the Nobel Prize. His answer was a rigorous checklist of four conditions. All must be substantially met, or the union will fracture under asymmetric shocks, crises that devastate one member while leaving others largely untouched. The four requirements: high labor, mobility, workers must move freely to where jobs exist. And disaster relief automatically transfer billions from richer states to harder-hit ones. The dollar survives these shocks because America's true union within stabilise. Europe in the 1990s met almost none of Mundell's conditions: labor, mobility, language barriers, cultural differences, rigid housing markets, and professional qualifications made large-scale movement rare. Powerful unions and political realities in France, Italy. All Greece mud 20%, wage cuts virtually impossible without triggering social collapse, and a central fiscal authority. The Maastricht Treaty deliberately banned it. No European treasury. No shared unemployment system. Strict deficit rules, but no mechanism for transfers. The euro was a monetary union without a fiscal union, a house built without foundations. Milton Friedman warned in 1997 that the euro would amplify political tensions rather than heal them. A one-size-fits-all monetary policy would punish weaker economies during downturns, while the stronger ones barely noticed. The political backlash, he predicted, could fracture the entire European project. He was dismissed at the time. The euro launched on January 1, 1999, amid champagne toasts and declarations of a new era. Once inside the euro, markets assumed implicit German backing. Borrowing costs plummeted. German level less 4%. Spain built more homes between 2000 and 2008 than France. Germany and the UK combined. In a normal sovereign currency regime, imbalances self-correct. The currency depreciates, exports gain competitiveness, and adjustment occurs, painful but manageable. Inside the euro, that escape valve vanished. Southern Europe could only pursue internal devaluation, grinding down wages, pensions, and public spending for years or decades to regain edge against German productivity. The productivity and competitiveness gap widened relentlessly, financed by recycled German and French bank loans. Harvard economist Martin Feldstein had foreseen this in 1997. Forcing diverse economies into a monetary straitjacket would breed exactly the nationalist resentment and conflict the euro was meant to prevent. The Greek crisis turned theory into human tragedy. By 2009, Athens admitted its deficit was not 3.7%, but nearly 13%. Bond yields exploded. The Troika, EU, ECB, and IMF imposed the harshest peacetime austerity in modern history. Public wages cut 30%, pensions slashed, VAT hiked, healthcare dismantled. Greece economy contract by 26% in fevere, collapse comparable in speed, and debt to America Great Depression. Hospitals ran short of medicine. Birth rates plummeted. The IMF later admitted in its own 2013 postmortem that its models had badly underestimated the fiscal multiplier. Austerity proved far more destructive than forecast. Yet Greece had no alternative, no currency to devalue, no fiscal transfers to cushion the blow. Debt to GDP actually rose despite the pain, trapping the country in a doom loop where shrinking output made the burden heavier. Ireland and Spain, overheating from credit booms, needed higher rates to cool speculation. The ECB delivered one rate, too loose for the periphery, only marginally helpful for Germany. By 2011, the situation reversed. Southern Europe was in freefall and desperately needed stimulus. Jean-Claude Trichet followed the rules. Mario Draghi's famous 2012 whatever-it-takes speech and later tools like the Transmission Protection Instrument were emergency improvisations that admitted the original architecture had failed. Nobel laureate Joseph Stiglitz captured it perfectly. The euro was half a surgery. The patient was left on the table. Germany, meanwhile, gained enormously. Its export-led model had long suffered from a chronically strong Deutschmark. The euro delivered a permanently more competitive exchange rate relative to its productivity. The euro created a classic tragedy of the commons, incentive to overborrow with costs borne collectively. The 2010 to 2015 crisis was never truly resolved, only postponed through massive ECB balance sheet expansion and creative monetary tools. Italy's public debt stands around 137% of GDP with chronically weak growth. The ECB's consolidated balance sheet once ballooned dramatically during the pandemic response, remains a central pillar holding spreads in check. Today, the euro is sustained not by resolved contradictions, but by permanent, managed dysfunction, implicit fiscal backstops, suppressed market discipline. Monetary union was supposed to force fiscal and political union. Instead, progress stalled. The bicycle wobbles, propped up by ever larger central bank interventions. The euro's greatest failure wasn't ambition. Ambitious projects can fail honorably. Choosing denial, extraction disguised as rescue, and postponement over honest redesign. You were sold a unified, prosperous Europe with a currency to match the dollar. What was built instead is a cage, too politically costly to dismantle, too fragile to endure indefinitely without deeper integration that voters in many countries have repeatedly rejected. Money is power. The euro concentrates enormous economic power without the democratic consent or institutional safeguards that Mundell, Friedman, and others said were essential. Without automatic stabilizers and without genuine risk-sharing, remember Greece, Remember the lost decade. Remember the hospitals without insulin and the generation that couldn't afford to have children while officials in. Brussels debated budget ratios.